Welcome to the Journey 2020. I'm Charles Morris. Happy to have you with us here on this Monday evening, coming off another great weekend. Blessings to you. Thank you for joining us. As you know, we're here every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. at www.thejourney2020.com. Now, first, before we start, I want to say, if you may have a show topic or something that you want to talk about, you may know someone that you think that should be on the show, email me. We can make it happen, right? Because we're always looking for people to talk to, always looking for good topics, So we do this show every week, so we can never run out of good topics or people to talk to. So I invite you to do that. You may have a good story to tell. You may have something that people may need to know about. So please email me, and we will make it happen. Again, I'm Charles Morris of The Journey 2020. www.thejourney2020.com. We've been around since 2013. Now, want to start off the show. I'd like to give you some information each week. Please Google the P shot and the O shot in the wave gain. If you didn't see the previous show, go back to the archives in the Journey. There was 3 shows done. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 on the P shot, the O shot, and wave game with Dr. Woods, Dr. Jumper. Okay, and you may find that this might be something beneficial for you, as Dr. Woods would say, helping you get back into the game. So Google it, find out as much information as you can, and it might be something that you want to, find out a little bit more information, something that it might be for you or someone that you may know. And I would say this to you, I don't know how much, but if you make an appointment and see Dr. Woods or talk to them and tell them that you found out about the P shot and the O shot on the Journey 2020, there's some type of discount in there for you, a little hookup. I don't know how much, but you got to let them know that you heard about it on the Journey 2020. All right. Okay. The Center for Urology, you can contact them at 407-830-4777, and it's also called the Rejuvenation Center. Okay, and you can find out more about them. Give them a call. It'll be something very beneficial for you. Now, last week I invited Pastor Anthony Lewis on the show, and I had heard him preach. I've been helping the church out for a couple of years now. One of the things I do is that I help churches set up their video ministries. I also help them stream and videotape and set up their audio systems and those type of things. So once I heard his testimony, I was like, wow, that's very powerful. And at that time, I didn't know what I know now. But even the part that I heard, I was like, wow, that's a testimony. So when he came on last week, we didn't truly get to the meat and the potatoes of the story. So I asked him to come back this week. And so we can really hear more of his story from the pulpit to prison. Here's a guy that you know when you hear him speak, and you know that he knows who the Lord is. He's very well, I should say, he knows Scripture. He knows the Bible. And you're going, okay, now how did this pastor get caught up? Well, he's here to tell us, as this is part 2 of a 2-part series. And he is the pastor of Solomon's Porch here in the Central Florida area here in Orlando. And so if you didn't get a chance to hear his story from last week, again, I keep saying go to the archives and so you can get caught up. And he's going to ask him to briefly kind of go back and kind of revisit some of the things that we talked about last week that would lead up to this week, so we can all know that we're all caught up. But I still say go back, check out the archives from last week. Again, I'm Charles Morris. Welcome to the Journey 2020. And Pastor, I want to thank you for taking the time to come back. Thank you for taking the time to come and tell us the rest of your testimony. Thank you so much.
But it's good to be with you again.
Well, thank you so very much. I was about to start to tell you a story from last week.
Okay.
And so let's get into that. First of all, I would like to introduce you as Pastor Anthony Lewis from the Solomon's Porch.
Yeah.
And I was telling them how I met you. But more importantly, I was telling them that what I have learned from my pastor is when you hear the word. Mm-hmm. So when you hear the word, you be like, oh, well, this person has my attention. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, Pastor. And this is, I'm not just saying this because you're here. I probably have heard you preach maybe 12 times, okay, or even more. And I have never, ever, ever heard you give a sermon where I said, he did not give the word today.
To God be the glory.
I have never, ever heard you give a sermon where I was going, because I've been in churches. I'm sure with your recording, you've been around. Right. I've been in churches. And as God is my witness, I'm standing up there and I am listening, and I'm going, wow, God have just gave you this platform. This is what you're giving your people, you know. And it's very sad, but I'm saying when I hear you preach, I hear people being fed, and that is why I was intrigued. And then when you begin to tell your story, mm-hmm, I'm like, wow, you have a true testimony. So we're going to back up so the people who are watching,
right, so that they can catch up.
Right, so they can, so they can catch up. Briefly, because I want you to truly get to the meat of your story, and that is you was born in
South Florida.
Right, South Florida, right, but you went to Detroit.
I went to Detroit because, as I mentioned to you, I'd never seen my father until, right, I was about 14 or 15 years old.
Right. Had
only spoken to him a few times on the phone,
right,
from birth and so on. Mm-hmm. God sent him into my life at the, mm-hmm, right time. Mm-hmm. I'm from South Florida, down there, West Palm Beach, Stuart, Florida, Fort Pierce. That's my neck of the woods, as, mm-hmm, I mentioned the last time. And then when God brought my father into my life, it changed my life, not because my father was spiritual or religious, but God, like he did with Joseph, had a way of, he needed to get me to Detroit. Mm-hmm. My natural mother was in South Florida, but he needed to get me to my stepmother, who was in Detroit, mm-hmm, now married to my father. My stepmother now married to my father. Mm-hmm. And that really, out of everything, that was what God desired, to get me to Detroit.
Right.
And as I shared with you what happened there.
Right. But there's a story to be told. I mean, there's a reason that I'm saying now when I say this. There was something that transpired in New York for certain things to happen. Mm-hmm. Like nuke. Is it nuke, right? Nuke, right. Nuke. Right. When you said nuke, and that situation where he came and, yeah, how all of that happened. Right. And where he was in one place, then you looked up, he was in another place. That's correct. And so kind of briefly tell that story just a little bit.
Okay. So when I went to Detroit, I told, mm-hmm, you that I came to know the Lord. Mm-hmm. After, as we talked last week, selling drugs and getting involved with all kinds of crazy gang activity. Mm-hmm. My stepmother's the one who came into the church, okay? And through her, I eventually began to have a desire to know Christ. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I shared with you, long story short, fast forwarding, that I did come to know him in Detroit under some very adverse circumstances, dropped out of school, high school and all of that. And then I ended up getting my GED after knowing Christ. Once I got to know him, I went to a private historical black college, Oakwood College in Huntsville, Alabama, to study to be a counselor, mm-hmm, social worker. Then I eventually started taking religion classes, which is a mandate there. Mm-hmm. But I loved them and fell in love with them so much until every chance I got a chance to take a minor or an elective or anything, it was a religious class. Not realizing that God was moving me from graduating with a psychology degree, and I ended up getting 2 degrees, psychology and theology, with theology eventually eclipsed psychology. Well, after pastoring in several different areas. Young pastor who was with a couple of other young guys, supposed to have been the new RoboCop type pastors, the new breed of pastors, this young group of pastors so that people can contextualize, in the early 80s. Supposed to have been the new breed of pastor, and then I eventually was promoted from one church to a larger church to a larger church, and then I became a conference official, which would be at the head level of our church in Chicago, and I became a conference officer. It was at that time that I told you that I went to Detroit, because I traveled a lot in the five state region of Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and so on. And that was and when I was going to Detroit, back to where I'm from, back to where my father lived, when I was going back and forth, a friend of mine who happened to be a pastor was a mentor of mine, older than myself, and I don't mention his name for just out of respect. But it was at that time that he asked me if I would go to Detroit to collect some money for him, not knowing what the reason for him wanting to collect money. I thought he just loaned some money to somebody, or lent some money to somebody, because he was pretty astute with money. But as a footnote, remember I told you that I was dissatisfied with the ministry, or the way the ministry was being operating. I just, the political thing, the wrangling, and one guy want a bigger church over another church, that frustrated me to no end, because I was very serious about ministry. I was very passionate about it. And while going to Detroit, I told him I would collect the money for him. I said, no problem. He gave me the address, gave me the lady's phone number, and as you recall, I went to collect it for him. The lady there...
And you was a little shocked.
Very shocked, to say the least. She started cursing and using profanity, and tell that such and such, this and that and the other. Caught me by surprise. I'm thinking I'm going for a pastor friend of mine to collect some money that he innocently, I'm innocent in this whole thing. So when I get back to the hotel, I call my pastor friend, mentor, and I say, hey, now this lady said whatever. And I used the expletives that she used. And I said, man, what's up with this? And he said, man, that. Then he started cursing. That such and such, and what, and that be, and so, So I'm saying, hey, doc. So he said, do you know anybody that can get my money for me? I said, man, I don't know anybody like that. When I get back to Chicago, remember we were fast forwarding because we shared some of this last week. When I get back to Chicago, I'm at a taco joint. We call them greasy spoon joints. And while I'm there, a guy sees me, man, in my Porsche, and with my dog, and he says, no, come on, man, that's a nice car, hook a brother up. Thinking that I'm a drug dealer. I think I told you that at that time we didn't have cell phones, but we had beepers. And doctors, pastors, and drug dealers
had beepers.
And he thought that I was a drug dealer because of what I was driving, not because necessarily the way I was dressed. But long story short is, I saw him some weeks later at the other Greasy Spoon spot. This guy only has two of them, one on one side of town and the other one on the other. And now I'm in my other car. I had a Volvo 760 GLE. I was listening to my music and had my sunroof back, waiting for my order. And I met this guy whose name was N-U-K-E, Nuke, again. And when he saw me this time, he said, man, oh no, come on, man. Hook a brother up. I do it all. There's nothing I don't do at any level. I'm like that. I'm your guy. Now, I'm thinking now, well, maybe this guy can help my man get his money. My guy promised me that if I got the money, which at first I told him I didn't know anybody in Detroit because I've been out of the streets for some years. He said, I don't know nobody who do that, But now I got Nuke here. And I'm saying, well, maybe Nuke can get his money. So we go to Detroit, because my man told me, my pastor friend, if you get this money, you can have half of it. Are you with me? Now, I really didn't need any money, really, but I'm trying to get out of the ministry here, man. I'm trying to do something different because I'm frustrated and I'm frazzled, man, and all of that. And it's easy for folk to say, well, you know, why don't you just trust God and pray to God? But that's a whole nother story.
Right.
You know, when you in the moment,
right,
and you got blinders on.
But then that's another understanding of being babes in Christ.
Yes, yes.
Because we're on different levels.
Absolutely.
A different understanding.
Absolutely.
And one versus somebody else has nothing to do with anything but your journey.
Yeah, that was my journey.
Right, right.
And I wasn't willing to take a step back in order. But let me give you the story. So when I meet him, he goes into the lady's office. We knock on her office, same office now that the lady cursed me out before, some weeks before, you know. And now she begins this same ramping and raving, right? Nuke jumps up on the table, jumps across the table, and he, you know, bam, bam, he takes care of his business. And I'm sitting there watching this.
You know, I didn't ask you this last week, but when that happened, what went through your mind when you saw all of this happen?
I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting that. I thought that maybe he would, I don't know, Doc, maybe growl at her, maybe flex on her, and she, you know, but I didn't expect that. And man, she's bleeding and what, and I mean, what the streets call, she got some act right up in her, and sure enough, I gave her an account number to have the money sent. And it was a few days, man, and she sent my man his money. Right. So I'm saying to myself, you know, I can't intervene because I came there to get the money.
Right.
So I've been out of the streets a long time, Doc, but not that long. Don't mess with the man's business. He's trying to handle, you know. But it did shock me. And when it was completed and I got the money, or right after it, I said, well, I wasn't really expecting you. He said, well, but what did you expect? I came here to get your money.
Right.
You know. So, at any rate, when I delivered, we delivered. My man asked me and said, look, I got some more people who owe me some money.
Right.
And that's when he said, this person owes me $50,000. This guy owes me, believe it or not, $250,000.
Right.
And he says, if you get my money, you can have half of it. And then, Lewis, I know what you're trying to do. So, man, by that time, you can do whatever it is that you need to do, because I know how frustrated you are with being where you are. Are you with me? So we go after this money, but along the way, and I'm trying to cut this story short. Along the way, Nuke tells me while we are preparing and planning and setting up to go and get the other monies, he said, man, you know, if I had a little something, I can do some stuff for you. I mean, this is slow and it's sure we'll get there, because the other money was in Houston, Texas, and, you know, somewhere else. And where we left off last time, Doc, was all of this happened between starting that and literally my whole life the rug being pulled out from under me was a matter of 7 months.
Okay, now also acknowledge your wife and your kids.
Okay, well, of course, I'm married. I had 3 children.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
very young.
Okay,
and I'm not really. I'm just out of touch, man, with what's going on here. Where Satan is leading me.
Right,
because I'm not the one.
But let me ask you, because I know people watching, because when they find out, well, you know, you're pastor, you're high up in the church, help us understand what's going on the spiritual side when this is going on, when you
Oh, I can tell you what's going on. The Holy Spirit, man, is whooping me.
Okay.
I mean, it's convicting me.
Right.
And I'm realizing that I ought not be doing this. But when you want something so bad, or want to get out of something so bad, or get away from something so bad, your spiritual reasoning is dimmed. It's put on the back burner. You find a way to get through it, or either to justify it. You know, because you want to get out of this,
right?
And that's where I was. I wasn't happy with it. My elders of my church, man, one of my elders to this day, God bless him, he's passed on, but he would tell me, he said, Pastor, and watch this now. He said, Pastor, you preaching, and you're sweating, and you putting the word out there. He said, but Pastor, something is missing. He says something is missing in your presentation, and he says, you want to talk about it? And while I was going through that, I said, no, Elder, just pray for me. I'll get past it. I'll get past it. And my wife used to tell me the same thing. She said, are you okay? And I said, I'll be okay. And I went through that phase and just told him to pray for me. And then one day, in the midst of all of this, because now I'm going to tell you what I did with Nuke. And I don't have a problem telling my testimony, by the way. I mean, because God has done so much. You know, I hope we get a chance to tell what God has done for me. That allows my testimony to. I'm ashamed, as it were, and wish that I hadn't done that. But God has elevated me so high until it's now a testimony, and it's not just something that brings about some guilt trip. Now it used to, but not anymore, because I see what God has done for me. But let me just share this, man, about my elder. He was so spiritually perceptive that he knew that something was wrong, something was missing in my life and in my delivery. My wife, of course, that's my wife. She knows me pretty much in and out, somewhat, you know, until she knows that something is missing. Something. It's like a 6-cylinder, man, and one of the cylinders is sputtering. She knew that, but I was unwilling to open up and talk to her, and I was unwilling to talk to the brethren in the church, because I'm thinking, with all this politicizing, that if I share what I was really doing, that these cats, you know, we're not going to be sympathetic, because they want your church, they want your position. So I felt kind of locked in. But I finally got to Nuke, and he said, "Look, I can speed this thing up for you." And I'm saying, "How?" He said, "Man, if I had $5,000, I can work it."
What does that mean?
Well, it means that he can go on the streets and flip it.
Okay, I got you.
And at that time,
all right. No,
whatever was required. Now, remember now, I'm not asking a lot of questions. I'm only interested in results. Because I'm trying to. I got a goal that I'm trying to reach. And I hear people now saying, "Well, why didn't you ask him what he was doing?" Well, I know what dudes do in the streets. I used to run the streets. You do what you have to do. It could be drugs. It could be, you know, it could be loan sharking. It could be whatever. This is Nuke I'm talking about. He gonna make it happen. And so, man, I gave him. I don't know, man, maybe 5 or 10 grand, whatever it was at that first time. And the first time I gave him 5, the devil gave me back my 5 plus some, right? The next time I give him 10, I get 8 back, and I'll give you the other 2 later. You know, it's that old bait and switch thing. And the next time I give him whatever, you know, it don't come back the way it's supposed to come back. And so I'm making a long story short. But now I've gotten my kids' educational money that I've gone and gotten out of the bank to give to this guy to try to make it happen quicker until we able to go and get the other monies that I'm thinking gonna happen, just like the first one happened in Detroit. That was simple and easy. I'm not the one doing the dirty work. I'm only setting them up and putting them together. So maybe it ain't as bad as you know, not that bad, but in retrospect we know that it's all bad. I'm setting it up. I'm leading him to, and my money didn't come back. So when I got to that point, I had to get out of my element. I thought I had to get out of my element. This is where the story turns. I'm thinking I got to get out of my element because dude is not giving me my money back. This is my money that I have worked for, didn't steal, saved up, and now my money is not coming back. So I now got to come out of my element, my church, my conference office. I got to come out of my element, get back on the level, man, to confront this dude. Where is my money? And so one day he's sitting up in my car, and he rears back in my Honda Accord, and he pulls open his jacket, and he shows me his gun, and he says to me, "Man, I'm gonna get you your money." In fact, I think he said the N-word. I'm gonna get you your money. You know, he was trying to show me, you know, you know who I am. I'm gonna get you your money. Well, it just so happens, Charles, that I own guns legally, and I told you way back. Remember, I told you I used to hunt. You know, with my dad. So guns were not foreign to me. And I had in Chicago, I had a gun. and I had gone to the gun range that day. That same day that he pulled on me, but well, he didn't pull it out, but he just showed me, don't press me. But I had a gun in the car, man, and I had a little 25 in my coat pocket, and then I had my Magnum that was in the I don't know, between the seats or something like that. Well, I had unloaded the Magnum at the gun range.
Right.
But that's the one that I'm about to use. Now, I don't know what you want to ask me at this point, but how did I get from this point? But the devil, I call it lures. You ever go fishing? You're fishing.
Right.
You throw it out there, man, and then you start winding it in, and you yank it, right? And you're trying to get that bass out from under the rock or from under the tree or whatever. That's exactly what the enemy did to me. He kept on throwing out and luring. And I lost my sense of spiritual equilibrium, my spiritual balance. But you don't see that while you're going through it.
Right, of course not.
How many of us are able to sit back, and if Samson saw what was coming before it came, he wouldn't have been flirting around with Delilah. Are you with me?
Right.
If David knew what he was going to see on the top of the rooftop, he probably, would have put some shades on. But that's, and we can all look retrospect. Well, why didn't you? And why did I can hear people all the time when I give my testimony. But, why didn't you?
But see, that's the thing, though, Pastor. Somehow or another, as a pastor, you're supposed to be different. I'm saying no. I'm saying
we're supposed to be.
Right. You're supposed to be. And people forget that we're just human beings.
Every prophet in the Bible, just about. That's what the Bible is made up, man. Watch this, Doc. The Bible is made up of drama. A whole lot of family drama, a whole lot of personal drama, a whole lot of bad mistakes. But Abraham lying about his, Sarah being his sister, which was really his half sister.
Right.
Are you with me?
Right. But
you're supposed to.
But what I try to say is, God does things a certain way, or things are a certain way, because He knows His people.
Yes, He does.
And so what I mean by that is, our makeup is like, I could have a wife and I could love her so much that I'm out of perspective of what this is next to me.
Yeah, either a lack of appreciation or she becomes a god to you.
Right. So
number of things.
So what I'm saying is, God always try to acknowledge or tap you on the shoulder and say, remember me. I am your focus.
Let me take it to another level.
Okay.
You can have a wonderful wife sitting next to you, but there might be one missing element that the devil know that appeals to you.
Right.
That's when he throws the lure out at you.
Right. But that is what I'm trying to say. Because I'm saying you can become so involved into something that is good, that you think is good. Yes. Now all of a sudden your focus and your energy and your direction is not the way it should be with Him.
No, it's not. And
because of what you are in love with or what you like. And so His thing is, no matter what this is, you still need to be focused on me and who I am.
And I need to be supreme.
Right.
I need to be central, and I need to be consulted every step of the way,
every day.
You know what we forget sometimes about Adam and Eve? The fact that they were fresh from the hands of God, the fact that they were made in His image, the fact that if there was anybody close to God and close to perfect, I would think, other than Jesus, they probably were. And yet, she frolicking around the garden and finds herself at the tree.
Right.
I mean, what I'm trying to say to you is that
that's my point, though. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that my pastor talked about in reference to, because he, even to the point that when it came down to when he's talking to Adam and what he put in us, he still went to Eve in a sense to say, well, yeah, I guess this is my woman. Because he had a choice.
He did have a choice, and he made a choice.
He made a choice in reference to, in knowing who God is, but that woman...
he was willing to sacrifice his relationship with God in order to get what he wanted.
Exactly.
Let's make that applicable to my situation.
Okay, there you go. All right.
I was willing to go along with Nuke as long as I got what I wanted, which ironically at that time was to resign from ministry or to get out of the ministry or to take a break from ministry. Ironically, that's what I wanted to do. Not because things weren't going well, not because I didn't have any money. I had prestige as an officer of the church, an administrative officer of the church, man, of the administration. Plus, I had a church on the side. So whatever, and I was still being asked to come and speak in different places, man, to young people, to this, that, and the other. But the devil don't care anything about that. You can have muscles as big as Samson, bro. It doesn't matter. You can have a gift that's overwhelming. This brother was knocking people, thousands out with the jawbone of an ass. Satan say, oh, I don't care nothing about that. I know what your weakness is. I know where I can get you. And his was women. And when you get to my situation, man, I was willing to overlook and minimize and dilute what Nuke was doing because I'm not the one, doing it. And I mean, put that in quotes. I wasn't the one jumping across the table to knock somebody out. I wasn't doing that. And when I started getting a reward from that, I'm figuring, man, I can do this for 2 or 3 months, man, and I'm out of here. Are you with me? Nuke wasn't giving me my money back. That was my personal money I was putting out there to speed up the process. Any rate, let me fast forward. So I go. So he shows me his piece. I got my gun. Now this is my testimony. It ain't nobody else's now. Are you with me? This is my testimony of what I went through. So when I was getting ready to grab my gun, I said, okay, so you gonna punk me, huh? So you gonna threaten me? Like you gonna flash on me? Oh, then the street started coming back up out of me. Something that had been buried started coming up out of me, and that is, man, you're not, who you think you are. Just because I'm a pastor, you're not gonna punk me. So I went to grab my gun to show him I got one too. I'm telling you, as I sit here, the Holy Spirit told me, don't draw, don't pull that one. Because that was the magnum that I had emptied. Are you with me? I had been using it at the gun range and I had emptied it. But what I did do, man, I grabbed that little small 25. And it's nighttime and we're sitting in the car. And I turn around, man, to him. I turn around to him and I start shooting.
Wow.
I started shooting. And in the car, my Honda Accord, bro, at night, sparks and lighting up, and I don't know how he found the handle, bro, because it was pitch dark. He found that little handle on that Honda, jumped out of the car, ran into the back of the car, and started shooting, man, through the windshield, in the back of my car. Bam, 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 bam. Put holes in my trunk, holes in my windshield. Actually, my windshield just shattered. And let me tell you how God works. So I go. That incident takes place. I scraped a car that was parked on one of the side streets in Chicago. Because when he's shooting, I'm ducking now. And my car is slowly rolling, and I scratched the car. My windshield is out. I'm getting ready to go home, and I'm trying to make it home. I don't live that far away, man. But all of a sudden, police come and pull up behind me, and notice that my windshield is busted out. And then they pull me over. And they, what happened? I gave them some story, bro. I'm giving you a real short version. I gave them some story that they really probably didn't believe, but they couldn't do anything about it. I said, well, somebody tried to rob me, and and whatever, and they shot at me, and I got away, and I'm on my way home, and I only live a couple of blocks away. And he said, do you have a registration for your guns in the city of Chicago? I said, no, I got a registration to own the gun. They said, no, not only own it. In Chicago, you must have a registration issued by Chicago to own the gun. So they took my guns away from me and literally took me in. Are you with me? And I had to call my brother-in-law to come bail me out. It's not a major crime, but it is one that you got to appear before the judge. And so... and by the way, a lot of folk want to know, with all that shooting in the car, did somebody get hit? Well, I did pop him. I did pop him. And not that I'm proud of it, but I'm saying people always ask me when I give the long version of my testimony, whatever. But let me tell you what happened to me. So I go back to the office, man, and put my car in the garage of the office, the headquarters of our church, right? I eventually take my car once I go through all of this drama with the police and take it out of impoundment, and I take it to get it fixed, man, with a guy that used to work on my Porsche, an Italian guy. They had a paint shop and a mechanic shop, if I recall. But I take my car, my Honda Accord there, Doc, and I say, man, I need for you to fix my windshield. I need for you to fix this and that and the other. He called me on the phone and eventually told me to come by his shop. Go by his shop. And he talks in an Italian accent to me and said, Pastor, what are you trying to do, man? Are you trying to kill yourself? And I said, what do you mean? He says, come here, let me show you something. And he takes me, man, and puts his finger in the headrest, the driver's headrest. And when he puts my finger in it, there's a bullet that's right in the headrest, that if my headrest would have been up or down a half inch or more, it would have come and popped me. He would have shot me in the back of the head. Wow. Now you would think now that would wake me up and be a wake-up call, right? To say, hey man, God is trying to tell you something. But I'm so upset, man, with this whole thing. My mind is bundled. I'm frustrated. I'm upset. I'm mad at this dude and all of that until I really don't get it. I really don't get it. Now, why am I giving you this part of the story? Because if you don't get it, man, in one way, God will send something else for you to get it.
Oh yeah.
He'll tighten the vice. I tell people, man.
He'll
tighten it. Until you get it. And so one young lady that was a friend of Nuke's told me that this is not my line of work. I mean, she really literally tells me that this is not you. Why are you doing this? So she got a bright idea to say, I got a cousin down in Mississippi who is a straight guy. She knows a guy that she dates is a straight guy, and he probably could get your money back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I said, okay, well, she says, well, he sells drugs, but he's a country dude, very honest. Like a hot water cornbread kind of guy, just a big guy, and he but it's a small town and there's no heat like Chicago. I go down there, man, meet the guy.
I'm laughing, right?
I give him the money, and the same thing that happened with Nuke happens with him. I give him, I don't even know how much, maybe $3,000. And he gives me my money back plus some, right? But the next time I give him money, it don't come back. Again, people are saying, well, dude, wouldn't you think that's the problem? When you are in Satan's web, you're not thinking, Doc. And you still pastoring? Yes, I was still a pastor. But I'm trying to find a way to get out of this thing that's not God's way. And the hole is being dug deeper, man, and deeper and deeper. Now instead of, man, 12 or 15 grand of my children's educational money that I'd saved up, man, instead of 15 out, I got 20 or 25 out now. And I'm just really freaking out. So look, watch this. In those days, unlike today, you swipe for everything, right? Fuel, you run your card through, what is it, whatever, you just put your chip in, put your card in. In those days, man, it was mostly cash. Back in those days, I'm talking about in the late '80s, man, right? Okay. So every time I go down to a station in the South, they don't, after a certain time of night, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever time, 10 o'clock, they won't take large bills. Okay. Are you with me? Right. But that's what I got in my pocket, $200-$300 and 50 and 100, a couple of hundreds and whatever. So I found, man, I had a problem. So I said, tomorrow I'm going to the bank and I'm going to change my money to 5 and 10s, because they said nothing over 20 after a certain time. That's just the way it was down in Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi. All right. So I go and change the money in the bank, and I'm so frustrated, man, with this whole process that it's a small bank on the edge of town. 2 tellers, almost like a trailer bank. I mean, it's like, so when I walk into the bank, man, to give them a couple $100 bills to change into smaller bills, right? Because I'm there in and out trying to have this guy, make me my money back, I get this bright idea that, man, this is a Huckleberry, Andy Mayberry
right.
story,
Andy Griffin,
man.
yeah.
But let me share with you. I'd gotten to the point now to where I just wanted out. I'm spiritually drained. I mean, I'm emotionally spent. I'm a wreck, bro. I'm almost like Elijah after the Mount Carmel experience that God had done great things for him. And now, man, when Jezebel say, I don't care what you've done, I don't care how much fire you bring down, I'm going to have your head by the end of the day. I'm cutting your head off because you done cut the head of my prophets off. Are you my false prophets? And that's where I was, emotionally spent, which is why I can identify with Elijah. Now he's running for his life, and he finds himself in a cave, Doc. And yet several days ago, fire came down from heaven. So, bro, I relate to these stories, man. So I'm going, man, and so I get this bright idea. And so the next time I come back down to it was just a thought at that point.
Okay.
But the next time I come back down, man, to Oxford, Mississippi, I go back to this bank. It's Christmas Eve. I'll never forget it. And it's early in the morning. And that night they had not a snowstorm, but an ice storm. Well, I'm Detroit, Chicago. I know how to drive in the ice.
Right.
And it was just like that, man, that I made my decision that I'm going to rob this bank.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to rob this bank. What if I get away? Well, of course, I'm thinking I'm going to get away with it. I mean, you don't go do it thinking you're not. But I say, man, on the edge of town, it's first thing in the morning. There was an ice storm tonight. These folk down south don't know how to ride on ice. I do. Even if anybody see me and give chase, they're going to be all over the road. Man, when I got up that morning, it was a ghost town. Nobody was moving. But these young people, these two tellers had made it to work. And as soon as they opened the door, I jump in. There's no cars in the parking lot or nothing. I go in, hat on. I used to wear some Malcolm X type of dark glasses. I pop my collar up, man. I know this story sounds crazy. I know for the folk who listen to it, it's like, it's crazy. But I pop my collar up, and I walk into the bank, and put a little, I think I had a cassette case, or it was still cassettes at that time. I had a cassette case in my car, and I literally, man, just simply put a piece of wire or put a piece of cord or something. I don't even know where. It might have been in the trunk of my car. That's not important. But I set it up on the counter and I demand from them. And I do have my gun, by the way. I don't even call it whether it's loaded or not, because I didn't plan on using it. But I needed to frighten them or scare them. And I told them to load the bag with money. And I left the thing on the top and said that it was a bomb. And I told them, somebody across the street, man, making it up as I go. Somebody's across the street watching, and if they see you do anything, they're going to blow up, blah, blah, blah. And they believed it because I got away and left, and I went to the cousin's house that I told you, the young lady's cousin's house. And when I got there, I didn't tell them what I had done, but they saw all this money, right? And I said, look, I need somebody to hold my car. This detail is important because God was saying, I'm not going to let you get away with this. Are you with me? So they say, I got a friend that's on the edge of town. He's a mechanic, and he stays with his grandmother or his mom's property or something like that. He said, but they got a whole lot of cars around there, and you just leave your car there. Now, they don't know I robbed the bank, Doc. Are you with me? I just told them, just have the guy keep my car. Get a guy, man, about $1,500, man, to hold my car. Tell him I'll come back in 3 days. Why I didn't take the car with me? I told you it was ice, man, all the way up to Memphis, Tennessee, and got worse as it went up north. So I said, I'll leave my car here, man. Once the weather breaks, I'll come back and get it in a few days. Are you feeling me?
Right.
So true enough, Doc. I didn't get it. I came back, but before I came back, they called me on the phone and said, this guy is freaking out because a picture came out in the paper of the bank robber, and the guy believes that it might be you. Are you with me?
Right.
He said, that's that dude. And they said, that ain't that guy, man. That ain't that guy. Cause I think I shaved my mustache, and I got glasses on. He said, no, I think that's that dude, man. And they said, no, that ain't that guy. When all along they're saying, that's the guy, But he took my car from his little mechanic shop way out in the edge of town with cars all around, and pushed my car way out in the woods somewhere.
Right.
Until I'm assuming some hunters came by and wondered, why is this nice looking Volvo sitting out here in the middle of, in the woods?
Right.
So they don't pay much attention to it, but on their way back, the car's still there. And so they're thinking all kind of things. I need to call the park ranger because maybe there's a dead body in the trunk.
Right.
Their imagination went wild. And that connected me ultimately, fast forwarding a long story short, ultimately it connected me to the crime, because when the FBI got involved, first police, then the park rangers, then the county sheriff, and then they're kind of putting two together, but they're saying maybe this is the same car. Nobody saw the car. Maybe this is the same car that was involved. You never know. They're just taking a chance.
Right.
So they find out the registration in the car, that is registered to me and the Lake Region Conference, which is the headquarters of our church, all right, up in Chicago.
Right.
And so they send some FBI agents by, just by chance, to see whether there's any connection. And they said, may I talk to Pastor Anthony Lewis?
Right.
And they say, well, he hasn't been in a couple of weeks or a week and a half. And they say, do you know where he is? They said, no, not really, but he's called into the office, but he hasn't come by the office. And they say, well, can we see a picture of Pastor Lewis? And they said, well, why? Well, we had some bank robbery done down south, and this car was found, and we don't know, but we're just trying to connect, and we don't know. And they said, no, that not Pastor Lewis. He wouldn't. I don't know who got his car. Somebody might have stolen his car, but not Pastor Lewis. No, but here's a picture of him.
Right.
And when the FBI sees the picture, they connected to me, and they said, that's our man. And so from there, they started going by my house, sending the FBI agents to my house, front door and back door, and my wife is wondering what the heck is going on, because they're knocking on the door, and where's your husband? And we believe that he might be involved in.
Right.
And so my wife eventually met me at a conference that we had. And I went to that conference, and they flew down. My wife came down, and when she came down, I took her in the bathroom. And because by now the FBI is kind of on to me now. Are you with me?
Okay.
And I know it's just a matter of time.
Right. Okay.
And so I told my wife what happened, and I told her, look, we can either, because I don't know, I think I might have, people always want to know how much money did I get. It might have been about 70 grand,
right.
60, 70 grand. And I told my wife, I said, look, we can either leave the country, get up out of here, or I can face the music, thinking that I might get 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Right.
Well, when I end up going down, being transported from Chicago down to Oxford, Mississippi, black guy, educated, been to school, think he's gonna come down here,
pastor,
and mess us over. It was not pretty, bro. They ended up giving me 12 years, and it was my first offense. 12 years. God says, to whom who knew his master's will are beaten with many stripes. And so ultimately, when I got sentenced, I'm standing before the judge, and this brother gave it to me in months, not years. He didn't say you got 12 years. He gave it to me in months, bro. Whatever the months come out to be, bro, it was a lot. And I had to do the math in my head while I was standing there. I mean, man, how many months is that in jail? Long story short, but let me just back up just a bit. When I was being transported from Chicago down to Oxford, Mississippi, I had to stop in Atlanta's penitentiary. And, that's how it works, man. Like whatever that movie that Nicolas Cage is in. I forget what the name of it is, but they handcuff you, take you to different places, and transport you. The guys, man, the marshals picked me up from Atlanta and took me through Memphis, and I stayed in Memphis for a couple of days. And when you ride with these guys for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, your conversation is struck up.
Right. And
they said, Mr. Lewis, they had already looked at your file, right? And they said, Pastor Lewis, we're not going to get into why you did what you did. He said, but I wanted you to know one thing. If it wasn't for your car, him and his partner sitting up in the front, right, with that wire mesh between you, he said, we would never have known who you were. We thought you were some Nicaraguan guy. We thought that you were some Sandinista guy. We thought that you were some Muslim terrorist. We didn't even know, because you look kind of, the picture kind of looked, whatever. He said, but that car is the only thing that linked us to you. And if it wasn't for that, we would never have found you.
Wow.
You know, and that was really God saying that this is not your profession.
Right.
And you're not going to get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to turn you in.
Mm-hmm.
And that car is the thing, man, that got me. So I ended up doing, and like I said, I'm leaving out a lot of story, Doc, but I ended up doing 9 years in prison, Doc.
Mm-hmm.
9 years. And after I got out, you want to ask me a question?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have.
Well, I can take a breath.
Take a breath. Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you because
how much time do we have?
No. We got time. No, we got time. I want to ask you. Along the way, because there's so many things that transpired that led from one thing to another.
Yes.
And so, I guess my question is, man, I really don't know how to ask it.
Ask it anyway.
No. I'm trying to, in the terms of when something led to something that led to something that led to something that led to something. I'm still in your mind. Where were you spiritually? And I'm not trying to mean I could go from Pacific to, but I'm still trying to figure out what was going on in your mind spiritually.
I was a wreck, Doc.
Right.
I was in turmoil.
Okay.
Knowing that I ought not be doing this. Mm-hmm. But there comes a point, I want to try to speak, man, to your audience. It's not as easy to turn around once you have jumped over so many fences when you're sinning. It doesn't matter whether it's adultery, it doesn't matter whether it's robbing a bank, it doesn't matter, man, whether it's stealing money from your job. You don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to rob a bank. Follow me now. You don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to commit adultery. You don't. It's the same process, and which is why I tell people to prayerfully consider the stories in the Bible.
Right.
Don't just read it and say, oh, David committed it, oh, Samson did it. Oh, there is a process, man, that leads you to a point to once you jump over that first fence. Are you with me?
Oh, yeah.
Married.
Right.
Get the phone number of somebody else. Once you jump over the first fence, and then text messages start coming. Once you jump over the second fence, and then the third fence, you get so far down the road until very few of us, man, know how to drop it and just simply, I'm out of here, I'm walking back. Okay. That's why the stories are in the Bible, Doc.
But I think the hardest thing, because there's things that I understand your story. I mean, I truly understand it. But the hardest thing, I think, for a lot of people who are in the church, who are outside the church, wanting to come into the church, not understanding how we so focus on each other and our flaws and who we are. And when the message is to focus on the word, and that's where you should try to be, because each one of us walk in with our own strength and our own weakness. Your strength could be my weakness and vice versa. And so it's so easy for us to point fingers at our flaws. I'm old enough to understand, just because he's the Pope, I see a man. I see in the flesh. That's what I see first. I don't see my pastor as a pastor first. I see him as, and he's constantly reminding the church that he's just a man. And I understand that each day is a challenge within itself, because some days it's good, and other days the challenge is a little different.
You know what people don't understand about those who are gifted, and meaning all of us have been given spiritual gifts. But those who are in visible positions, what the average church member doesn't understand is Satan assigns double duty to demons to bring you down the higher you rise up
right
in the spiritual realm.
all
right?
Yeah.
Because people look at Pastor Tim's and say, wow, he had a wonderful ministry and a powerful ministry. And you know, what happened, you know, so on and so forth. The more God is willing to use you, that's the more aggressive Satan comes after you. And I really do believe this, that the devil, that the demonic colonel or major or captain over certain demons say, hey, I need you over here. If there was one demon that was hounding me, I can assure you, once I began to make decisions that were not congruent with God's word, not in line with God's word, and start deviating, I do believe that the enemy said, hey, we got him, he's sliding, we got him. And I just believe that extra demons come and try to pull you down, which is why you gotta stay prayed up, which is why your members have to lift you up, which is why your elders, man, like they did with Moses, you gotta lift up, man, his arms. It's because he's exposed, man. He's exposed. And I'm glad the story is there of Jesus when he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. I'm glad that when he started his ministry, and the enemy knows, man, that this carpenter kid is now, that I saw in the temple at 12, you know, I mean, rattling off profound spiritual truths. This guy now has officially entered the ministry. And when he got ready to enter the ministry, you know, that's when the enemy, man, came. The Bible makes it clear that when he fasted and prayed, that the enemy came and tried to tempt him. You know, and this is Jesus we're talking about. So the same thing happens, man, when you are being used of the Lord. Satan recognizes, you know, like they say in the street, game recognizes game. Now, this is not a game, but Satan recognizes the threats that are against his kingdom. He recognizes that. And so when he sees that opening, it might take 10, 15, 20 years in the ministry. Doesn't matter. He watches for that moment, that break, for you to crack.
Right.
And he watches for it.
I hear you. And I guess it's every pastor or every church challenge to help the congregation, its people, to understand the seriousness of what you just said, because we don't understand that it's a spiritual warfare.
Yes, we fight not against flesh and blood.
Right. We don't understand that we're more spiritual than we are physical. And that spiritual warfare is a continuous battle 24/7, as long as you're here.
Yes, sir.
And we don't understand, because I was telling you about my friend who I was,
told me about that,
who I was talking to her about War Room. You know, I was,
I remember.
Right.
Yes, that's the movie.
And she kept talking about the script. She kept talking about the actors. She kept talking about this and this. And I kept saying, it's the message.
That's right.
It's the message. You're missing the message. And she want to focus on, well, it wasn't well acted. It wasn't award winning. It wasn't, you need to watch this movie if you want to see some real actors. If you want to see this script written. And I'm trying to say to her, you're missing it. It's the message.
The power of prayer.
The power, right.
To break strongholds on her husband. And the older lady directed her to that sanctuary in the closet.
Right.
And what I get the greatest joy out of in my ministry, there are a couple of things that really, really excite me. When young children, 9, 10, 12, tell me, Pastor, that was a powerful message, not edged on by or encouraged by their parents. I mean, but they got the message, meaning that it was simple enough for them to understand that, and that feels job done. The other one is when the grannies of the church or the old senior saints of the church say, Pastor, I woke up about 4 o'clock this morning and I had you in prayer. I called your name before the Lord. That, more than any pat on the back or anything, that excites me because they understand. Okay,
now you gotta help us now. Okay, you in prison. Okay, I'm gonna throw about 3 or 4 of them at you now. Okay, you got caught. You've been sentenced. You gotta kind of share with us, what was that like for you, knowing you leaving your wife and your children. What was that like? When did things start to become clear to you from your spiritual side? And when did you have enough confidence to say, I need to get back into the church and do what I need to do?
I did not, and this is interesting question. I never got back into anything, or didn't desire to, wasn't looking to, didn't want to. Just didn't, Doc. That's the last thing I wanted to do, is to tell somebody that I was a minister, and that I had done what I'd done, because it's hard to
Definitely.
I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around it. But at any rate, man, I have so much I could say, but I don't have time to say it.
Yeah, say it.
But it is as dumb as the young man leaving home where rent is paid, is good, servant serving him, father loves him. Are you with me?
Right.
Probably lived in a fabulous home on the ranch, and now you get the bright idea that you want your money, and you go off to a far country. See, when we read these stories, my man, we think that it's just a prodigal son story and he made it back home. Dog, that's dumb. That's stupid, man. That's like, you know, dude, where you going? I mean, why you want to leave this environment, man? There was no sign in the story of a problem being at home, or his dad was wearing him out, or his dad did not. That's not in that story. That story gives the impression, when Jesus tells it, that this dude had no reason to leave home, but he did. And not only did he go into a country, he went into a far country. That means, man, he went a long way away. How many signs did he pass before he recognized, man, that this don't look like home, and it don't look like my hometown? But you know, you on a mission, and you know, and he's self-destructed. But you asked me a question, man, and let me answer it. I didn't try to get back in. It's the last thing I wanted anybody to know. But let me tell you what God did. Guys used to walk up on me, and when they were having Bible study, they would literally say, hey, man, can you come and teach Bible study for us? And I'm saying, what makes you think that I know anything about the Bible? Why would you ask me? And I've come off like that to a couple of guys in the joint, man, not realizing that, hey, this is a dangerous environment, so you got to watch how you come. But I mean, I was defensive. I was saying, well, God, what makes you think I know the Bible? And they say, hey, well, bro, I'm just asking. You know, I'm just asking. But that was the Holy Ghost saying, you know the word. There was an aura about me that even though I had sinned, I was still called to the ministry. Even though David, man, had a relationship with Bathsheba, and don't forget, murdered her husband. He was still king of Israel and anointed at a young age to be king. So when the anointing of God is on you, man, it's a crazy thing. It's God saying, you know, you're not going to get out of this that easy. You're not going to escape from this. So guys, man, I would be walking on the track trying to clear my head. And man, I had a friend of mine who walked up on me one day. He was a pimp from Memphis. He's had a 30-something year sentence, man. And he just come up on the track, man, and walk next to me, right? Now, you know, the track is where you do exercise out in the yard. You see it on the movies, man. So I'm just trying to walk off my frustrations, man. And he walk up on me, man, and just start walking. Well, when you pull up on a brother in prison, man, you need to state your claim, what you here for. So he'd be walking with me, man, and he was just walking with his little cool walk, man, with his little hand and bopping. And he'd say, hey, man, I don't know what you got, but whatever you got, I want it, man. I said, what you mean, want what? He said, yeah, well, you can fool everybody else here, man, but you can't fool me. He said, no, the Lord, man, the Lord is on you, bro. He said, the Lord is on you, and whatever you got, he said, man, I want it. And finally, man, I probably even got emotional on the track, man. I couldn't even be defensive any longer. This dude, man, done peeped me. He done looked beyond, and I broke down, and I said, yeah, man. I said, look, I used to be a minister out on the streets. And he didn't break a stride, bro. He didn't raise an eyebrow. Really? He just kept on walking and kept on bopping. Said, man, I knew there was something there, bro. I knew there was something. He said, but you're here for me, bro. I don't know who you here for, but you're here for me. That happened throughout the rest of the 9 years of my incarceration. I could never get away from it. So I ended up teaching Bible study, I ended up having a service, I mean a full-fledged service with inmates coming there in prison. I mean, you know, I did revivals and Daniel the Revelation seminar. I was in the belly of the beast, and I could never get away. And when I recognized I could not get away from my calling,
but see,
I accepted it.
But see, the other side of that, I can say this, and you probably will understand it. God sent you there.
There's no doubt.
Right.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Because I think we were talking, and we were talking about how some people
used
right
my circumstances
right
to put me in prison.
Right.
And guys respected me because I was one of them, not somebody coming from the outside in and then going back home.
Well, well that too, but what I'm saying is, because you will never know the impact. You won't know the impact that you had on all those men in that place, just like the impact that you have in church.
Let me help you with that.
Okay.
Can I help you with that?
Yeah, okay.
Let me tell you what God did to let me know, because remember, you're running out of time.
No. Go ahead.
Remember, I was not only in there for them,
right,
but I was also in there for me.
Right.
God knew what I needed
right,
in order to be saved.
Right.
Whatever it was that was stirring deep down in my heart, God knew that it had to be flushed out. And for whatever reason, he figured that prison would do it.
But how frustrating is it for you, who you love God and you love his people and you love your purpose? How frustrating is it for you to know that you are here for his purpose, and for whatever he needs to take you through, he will take you through it, good, bad, or indifferent in our perception? You understand that. But for those who look at you, not necessarily you, but people in general, to name you, to label you, to not understand what you just said, because they're so into the world that they don't understand your life and even why you were born.
Okay, well, you see, now you're getting deep to the again, time restraints.
Right.
There is a divine purpose. And you were at church last weekend when I preached.
Yeah.
The one thing God does not need our comments on or commentary on is how to develop character, how to save us. I mean, some people go through drugs experience.
Right, exactly.
Some people go through what I went through. Some people go through.
Right.
I mean, I can name thousands.
I mean, when you made the statement, maybe you needed to marry this type of person.
Yes.
Maybe you need to go over here, or maybe, but.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. And maybe there's a reason why God allowed your child who grew up in the church to be a thorn in your side.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't meddle with how God is saving people, man. And that's one of the things that when I have time to give my testimony to people, I'm talking about like full time, Doc. I'm talking about like a week of prayer kind of time. I'm talking about like a weekend revival time where I can share it all and entertain questions. I say, let me tell you something. Because when they hear my story, let me tell you what happens, Doc. They first sit back and say, wow, or it just blows them away. And then I begin to make personal application. Are you with me? With Bible characters as well as what people are going through today. And I tell them, man, when God wants to save you, he will do whatever is necessary to save you. It doesn't matter whether it is as embarrassing as what happened to David, or as embarrassing as Peter walking on water and turning around to his friends and say, man, hey, when he was walking on water, he turned around to the disciples. In fact, the Bible, that's when he sunk. He turned around to them, man, and I don't know what he said. Hey guys, look at me. I don't know. Ain't I'm all that? I don't know what he said. But the Bible says he sank. And when he sank, man, he got it. God, Lord, save me. And God, Christ lifted him up and walked him back to the boat. Didn't say go. He walked. See, and people don't understand that God is in this thing in terms of saving us. So when you go through it, you talk about how difficult it is. When you go through it, you look back over where God has brought you from, and then I now can share with people who are going through stuff, man. I'm talking about stuff in the church, and I can tell them, man, been there, done that. I mean, guy, man, who feels, man, that he has just turned his back on God. Young lady who feel, man, that there's no more hope for them. I give my story to them, and I tell them, let me tell you something. If God can restore and redeem me. And of course, you know that after I got out of prison, after some time, God eventually sent me to Africa, and I was a missionary in Africa for 7.5 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you know, I've told part of that story, man. But God used me in a way, perhaps after the fall, in a way that I probably could not have ever been
Right,
used,
exactly.
perhaps,
Right.
without really experiencing the depth, man, of the depth of falling from God's grace, which is a different story, because I just don't believe you can fall from God's grace.
Well, we'll see, the thing is,
call it
right, you never did.
Yeah, grace follows you.
Right, because, and that's evident in your story.
Yeah.
Because even when you went to prison, look at what was taking place.
That's right. And I was going to say something that I almost forgot. When people get out of prison and they want to stay in touch with you, they say, hey man, how can I get in touch with you when you get out or whatever? Well, what you do is you try to give them a phone number that you know is not going to change. This is just how it works in prison.
Right.
Because if they get out before you or you before them, you know, and so I gave them my mother's number in Detroit, because I knew that it had been the same number for years and was going to always be that home phone number.
Right.
And I gave them that. The number of guys who would call my mother, this is what God did for me. The number of guys who would call my mother before I got out and after I got out, that said, her last name was Reese, because my dad's last name is Reese. Mrs. Reese, you have no idea as to the impact that your son had on our lives, or on his life. He could be in Oakland, California, he could be down in LA, it could be, man, in Dallas. It doesn't matter. When guys get out and go back home, I guess out of gratitude, to God be the glory of what happened, how our interaction, and God allowed me to hear God. Even when I was in Africa, my mother still got phone calls. Are you with me? Saying, do you know this guy? Do you know that guy? Do you know Red? Do you know Slick? Do you know what? Do you know who? And she said, he left his number here and said so on and so forth. Sometimes these guys would cry on the phone and say, ma'am, I need to get in touch with your son because he impacted my life. God used him in a mighty way. Well, God allowed that to happen so that he could really say to me, your being out of commission and out of the pulpit, the outside freedom, is not in vain. Those things sustained me, bro, and they kept me going. That God had not forgotten me.
See, now I'm going to say something, and you may understand. Your impact would probably always be more powerful outside the pulpit.
It generally, I don't know. I can't weigh.
No. What I mean by that is, what I'm trying to say is, in a crazy like way, is because regardless of who's coming into the church, there's brokenness, and even when you think of the prison system and the brokenness that's even in there.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And so what I'm trying to say is, the brokenness that is there and the impact, and I'm saying just walking the yard like you were saying. I mean
you know what, one of the strange things about prison, Doc? These guys know fake.
Oh yeah.
They see it.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Oh yeah.
They are the epitome of game.
Right.
You got to have game in order to walk up on somebody and slick them and trick them and you know.
Right.
You have to have game, Doc. You got to be able to recognize, man, in most cases, a guy who really is trying to sell drugs from you or who's undercover. It's just that sixth sense you get in the streets, right? These guys respected me in prison because I was real and I was genuine. You would think that they would turn their nose up at you and say, man, that dude fake, man. You know, he used to be a preacher. No, I don't know. God allowed my genuineness, my genuine broken repentance, man. And I was what I was. I didn't try to make out that I wasn't, and I didn't try to hide it. It was what I was. But these dudes, man, eventually understood that, and the utmost respect in prison. Go ask Reb. You know, hey man, go talk to Reb about that. I mean, they were referrals all the time, man. It didn't matter what these homosexuals. It didn't matter, man. You need to talk to Reb, man. You know, because it wasn't just it was real, man. And they knew that I didn't become a pastor in prison. I was before going there. Right. You know, and there's a lot to be said about that too, Doc.
Right. And see, that's what I'm saying.
Be said about that.
Right, because they may have even respected you more.
Well, no doubt.
Right.
No, there's no doubt.
Right.
I mean, I was readily available, man, for all kinds of things that guys was going through. Can you imagine, man, guys whose sons followed after them who are in prison? I'm talking about in terms of the game.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, man, you get a call, and the counselor calls you down and say, hey, Willis, your son, man, you know, I mean, you just got killed in Chicago.
Right.
And, you know, and he's trying to show this exterior, man, this tough guy image, man, you know, around. But man, when the lights go out, bro, and you hear somebody, man, tapping on your either your bars or either on your little cement, right? If you're in a cubicle, hey Rev, I need to talk to you, Rev. You know, hey man, this thing about my son, you understand? It's tearing me up, you know. And I didn't mean to be this example to him, but that's all he knew. And you right there, Doc. They're not going to the chaplain's office, man, because they believe dude is a part of the system for the most part, the chaplain, right? And to be there for all of those kinds of things, or marriages, man, old dudes, man, who have through life gotten away with stuff, or either just started the game late. Are you with me? And now he's 66, 68, and he got a 30-year sentence, knowing he's gonna die in prison.
Wow.
And a dude, man, is able to come and talk to you about that. I mean, it's stuff that I could only really tell in a book. I could really only share in a book, man, the number of times that you're there for guys, you know, or a guy who had a 35-year marriage, you know, and his wife, man, has been with him for 10 years, but he got 20 more to go, and she just comes to say, I can't do the 20 with you, I'm done, I'm finished, you know. And he, you know, so know that he's going to be taken out in a body bag. He know he's going to die in prison, man. You know, and you're there, man, to give them. Look. Can I share one experience?
Okay.
A guy, man, who was a Muslim, Christian Muslim, and you know, Christian, and then with But his name was Barry, Barry or Berry. I'll never forget, man, that Barry used to always ask me he's Muslim, you know, Nation of Islam. He'd always ask me questions, right? He would always ask me questions and say, hey, what about this? What about that? What about this, right? Now, I really did not know the impact that I was having on his life, because he was the nation, was Kufi and all that. But when he got out of prison, man, and I eventually got out, he called me one day on the phone, Doc. Gave him my mom's number, right? Cell phones are kind of becoming more popular now, that time. And he picked up the phone and said, hey, what's up, Lewis? I said, hey, how you doing? He said, man, you don't know who this is, do you? I said, no, Doc, I can't pick your voice up quite yet, man. He said, man, from Philly. He said, man, this Barry, man, this Barry. I said, what, Barry? From McKean or from whatever joint? That's how you identify it. Man, from what, or from this prison? Yeah, man. He said, I said, man, how you doing? He said, yeah, man. He said, he's much older than me. He said, man, hey, man, you never guess, man, what I'm doing now. I said, no, I don't. He said, man, I'm a deacon in the church, man. Yeah, I said, what? Nation of Islam, Muslim, right?
Right.
He said, yeah, you didn't think I was listening to what you were saying, did you? When you was answering them questions for me, did you? I said, well, you know, I know the Holy Spirit brings things. He said, man, yeah, I'm a deacon up in church, man. And man, I met a sister in the church, and and so on and so forth, and giving a testimony. These are the kind of things that really break you. You know, would not break your heart, but if you're hard, it'll break you down. And he said, yeah, man, you know. And that brother, man, I think he passed away a few years ago, just a few years ago. And his wife to this day still communicates with me and tells me, that he was in the church until the day he died.
Wow.
He had a heart attack or something like that, had some heart issues. But man, he was out for a long time and came into the church. But those are the kind of testimonies, man, that I have, that you never know the impact that you have on people's lives, you know. But he left the Nation of Islam, he became a Christian, and was serving the Lord.
Well, your story is on so many different levels. It's absolutely amazing.
And by the way, I'm still married to the same wife.
Well, I was hoping that you would kind of tell that, because that's why I asked that question. Remember, I asked that question earlier on about how that was, with the marriage, and because I wanted you to kind of tell that.
Yeah, we're still married. We're married to this day.
Right.
And yes, a lot of stuff happened while I was away. That's a long time.
Right.
But ultimately, we believe that God did not make a mistake when he brought us together at Oakwood College as young lovebirds. Are you with me? And when you know that God has done something, you don't have to go back and second guess it.
Right.
So in the midst of all that we went through, we still came to the conclusion that under the umbrella at Oakwood College that day, when it was pouring down rain, and I asked her, can I get up under her umbrella and go to another religious service with her? And she alecky mouthed me and said, you ain't gonna melt. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna get up under here anyway. Well, we just came to the conclusion that God did not err. And so we asked God for the power and the strength to reconcile and to forgive and to start anew. It's like a second beginning from wherever we were.
Right.
And to this day, she's the first lady of Solomon's Porch.
Right. Well, Pastor, I didn't get a chance to ask you to pray before.
I did pray when I sat down here, though.
Okay, well, I actually prayed as well, but I'm going to ask you to close us out in a prayer.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
Amen.
All right.
Our Father and our God, we come before you today, and we are so grateful for your redeeming grace. We're thankful for the power to restore and the power to redeem. I've said it before, and I always tell people one of my favorite verses is in Joel chapter 2, where God says that I will restore the years that the locust and the cankerworm caterpillars have eaten. You have certainly done that for me. And I just believe that if people understand that if you can save me, the least, not worthy to be saved, there's absolutely no reason why you should have pulled me up from the gutter and then placed me back in the pulpit and then sent me around the world, literally around the world, to preach the gospel. If you can do it for me, you can do it for anybody else. And you just do that. You take the worst, and then when you polish them up, and then when you lift them up, and when you elevate them up, it's for other people to say, wow, that person is no more special than I. In fact, they did worse than what we consider, worse than what I'm doing. And if God can save him, God can save me. God's grace is still available. The psalmist said, goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life. I love that text because it means that no matter what you do, no matter what you go through, God's goodness and his mercy are on the side to lead us to where we ought to be. And so I give you praise and give you thanks. And I hope this testimony, which is an abbreviated version, will be a blessing to somebody and cause them to understand that Jesus saves and that his blood does cover us and that he will take our history, our bad history, checkered past, and somehow the blood of Jesus covers, and then he lifts us up and gives us a testimony worthy of telling people how to be saved. I give you praise and I give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I want to ask you if there's someone out there that would like to find out more about your testimony, if there's someone who would like to talk with you, if
they're happy to do so, I'm happy to give them my phone number. I'm happy to give them my email address.
Okay.
They can also go online and look up adventporch.org and our church information is there. But my phone number is 954-536-5477. I feel like Butler from the Chicago Bulls, who gave his personal number out to everybody when he was traded. But anybody have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them, man. 954-536-5477. That's my phone number. And my email address is my name, Anthony Lewis. It's ANTHONY LEWIS GBG @gmail.com. Anthony Lewis GBG @gmail.com. What does the GBG stand for? God's been good, or God be glorified. It's just GBG @gmail. I'm happy to correspond with anybody, whether it's for them or their children, or somebody's going through this experience, or a husband is in prison or whatever. I'm happy to minister to them.
Okay, well, I truly want to thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to come on the show two weeks in a row. I'm going to actually play this back on Facebook, and I'm certain that you'll be getting some phone calls as well.
Well, I hope that it's I really hope that it's a blessing to
to somebody.
I
know,
do.
And I know there's a lot that hadn't been said, but there was a lot that was said. And I think as far as understanding the true message, when you hear your testimony, some understand, but we are where we are, and that's where we have to start from. So
God says, Christ says, "Lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the world, even through prison."
All right, man. Again, want to thank you for taking the time here at the Journey 2020 to tune in to hear Pastor Lewis' testimony, and I'm going to actually play this back for myself, because there's so much in the message, and I get to hear him, at least once a week, and so I always look forward to his sermons. So I even put him. You don't know it, but I put your sermons on my Facebook. See, he had no idea, So, I actually put your sermons on my Facebook. Right. All right. We're going to be back next week, and make sure that you join us here at 7 p.m. every Monday at www.thejourney2020.com. Enjoy the rest of your week.